Welcome back to our yearly prediction video series. And today we have with us once again Steve Winterfeld, Advisory CISO at Akamai. Steve, before we dive into predictions, can you quickly remind our viewers what Akamai does and what core problems are you solving for organizations as we head into 2026?
Akamai is really a partner that allows you to build on it, perform faster, and secure it. So we started off as a content delivery, best in breed for content delivery. If you're streaming a major event, you're probably using Akamai. Then we transitioned. In fact, more than half of our business is around security. Securing the edge from your web application firewall. We've adapted that based on our customers talking to us to include a firewall for generative AI and large language models. The same thing for a tool to protect APIs and that level of engagement. We're helping customers with their fraud strategies. We protect a number of large banks and so help there. We protect against things like ransomware through our micro-segmentation. And then finally, that build aspect of, Akamai has its own cloud infrastructure. And so if you're looking for a place to put generative AI or other things like that, that's kind of what we do. And so one of the reasons I'm talking to you today is on that security side, for over 10 years now, we put a State of the Internet Threat Report out. And so we wanted to share some of the threat trends we've seen over the last year and where we see our customers focusing on their security strategy.
No, I'm not going to ask you to grab a crystal ball, but looking at patterns and trends from last year, looking at your own report, what are your top 3 to 5 predictions for major shifts we will see in cybersecurity this year?
A lot of this isn't the black swan. Most of this is just the threat is getting bigger, faster, and so as we look at this, more and more of our customer engagement, our customers, as any company engages with people on the internet, is going out through APIs. And those APIs are becoming more and more critical. And so we continue to work with customers that are discovering rogue or ghost APIs. Customers who are discovering they really don't have the visibility. You've seen big breaches around abuse of API as opposed to malware. And so, you have to have that visibility. Right behind API is, large language models, generative AI, agentic AI. And we're seeing, again, I'd love to reference frameworks because industry best practices are something as a CISO I hold dear. So one of the models that has always been good is OWASP. So the first OWASP against web pages, I used a WAF. The second OWASP came out for APIs. APIs attack were unique. I needed a new tool. Then came out large language models. And so again, the attacks are different and unique. I needed a different tool. Now we see Agentic AI has a new one. So I think that's a good indicator of looking at where the industry's going is when these industry best practice models are putting out reports because so many people, so many threat criminal actors are focusing on those engagements. And finally, I would say, I continue to worry about ransomware, the impact of ransomware. I don't know if I can name a company that went out of business because of a data breach. I can name a dozen companies that went out of business because of ransomware. And so ransomware's threat is much higher. And really, I think that's where it comes down to. It's almost a reverse lottery ticket. You get you win a lottery ticket, that's great. You win the reverse lottery ticket, you're out of business. So, as you look at it, it's not very likely, but when it happens, the impact is just so huge. So again, these are all pushing forward, but if you don't get these right, I think the impact could be huge.
What are some of the biggest challenges or bottlenecks organizations will face as they try to navigate these security challenges?
I think part of that depends on the industry. If you go into a heavily regulated industry, finance or healthcare, I think, there's some compliance challenges, some regulatory challenges. Uh, as we think about geography, you know, typically we see the EU being one of the leaders in how to protect through regulation, and so we see them coming out with things like the EU AI Act. We see more states coming out with those. So I think, first of all, make sure you're coordinating with your legal team. Your legal team is tracking all these things. If you're in a regulated industry, the next is, are you partnering with vendors that give you flexibility? You know, and it comes down to talent. Right now, if I don't know that I can hire all of the security AI experts I want. There just aren't enough of them. And so am I leveraging vendors that have the expertise? The example is DDoS. Akamai has a team that fights DDoS every day. We're seeing new DDoS records being set, significantly new records being set. And so by having, a vendor like Akamai who specializes in that, then you're getting the best. If my team who deals with DDoS internally once or twice a year, they're not going to be as good. So I think that would be another bottleneck is the skills and the vendor coordination to make sure that I'm optimizing how I protect.
Now, every challenge presents an opportunity. What are the biggest opportunities that will arise this year because of these challenges?
Well, I think, we just need to be partnering better. Again, as a cybersecurity lead, I want to be a business partner. I don't want to tell people what they can't do. I do want to make sure that they understand the risk of what they're doing. And so when we talk about opportunities, I think this is another year of high transition. Business models are going to be shifting, how we work internally. Again, I'll go back to APIs and AIs because I think that's the biggest area. So for AI, how are my employees using it? Where am I using it internally? And where am I offering it externally as a service? I have to protect all three of those. I have a huge opportunity to train my people internally. I have a huge opportunity to move more effectively and efficiently using AI internally. And finally, where I'm offering it as a service, I need to make sure we're doing it in a secure, compliant way that we're going to be successful. The same thing is going to be true for anything you talk about. APIs, do I know where they are? Do I know how we're using them? Are we using them securely? Do we have visibility? There's huge opportunities in all this transition, I think.
What actionable advice do you have for enterprise leaders, and what should they start doing right now to be prepared?
Well, this is a show in and of itself. The First, some of the fundamentals. Almost want to assume you've been breached. Almost want to go back and build an environment that's not assuming anything. I want to use my vendor management to ensure third party and supply chain is done well. I want to understand where we're using AI and protect it. I want to understand if any of our employees are using some of the new techniques like vibe coding. I had a great partner in security tell me about a tool he had created with vibe coding, and I'm like, well, what instructions did you give it around security? He's like, oops, I didn't. Just that example of making sure that I have that security culture. It's the beginning of the year. We should be updating our risk portfolio for things like everything I've talked about: DDoS, ransomware, API, Gen AI. Do I have strategies around Gen AI? Do I have playbooks around APIs? Have I integrated resiliency into my program? And how am I testing that and validating it through exercises? But again, going back to assume breach, have I gained situational awareness and measurable resiliency and readiness across my entire organization would be that kind of question.
Akamai is a large company with many focus areas, but zeroing in on your area, especially with Agentic AI becoming such a big topic this year, what are some key priorities Akamai will focus on in 2026 to help customers navigate this landscape?
Akamai has, I think, 15 to 20, depending on if you include services, security products. But really where we see most of our customers talking to us about is where they're expanding, where they're growing new. They still want to talk to us about API and segmentation and getting those right. But I think most of them are into the next challenge, which is around large language models. How are they protecting them? How are they getting visibility on them? And as we go forward, I think that's probably the heaviest area we're getting engagement from our customers is how can we help them with their large language models, visibility, protection, and ability to adaptively mitigate the threats.
Steve, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your predictions with our audience. I look forward to the next conversation. Thank you.